This is Managing Mayhem.
Brought to you by two lawyers and a layman.
Because good intentions are not a legal defense.
Wait, I'm sorry, they're not? Okay, well, let's get going then.
Hi, and welcome to Managing Mayhem. I'm Jeff, joined by Patty and Jack. What is happening today? What's going on?
Hello.
Well, we are doing great. We're talking babies today, which we always love to talk about.
Gaga.
I'm fielding a lot of questions about paid parental leave policies. So I think this is a good time to talk about them. People want to know what other companies are doing, what they're giving, legal implications, pitfalls. And so let's get after it.
Yeah.
Okay. What, for me, what is parental leave versus is it different than maternity leave or maternity leave? Should it just all be parental leave?
That's actually part of the confusion. I think traditionally it was maternity
I thought you were
leave.
about to say that's actually an irrelevant question.
No, very relevant. Maternities for mothers, paternities for fathers, the terms. So traditionally, maternity leave was offered for pregnancy disabilities, childbirth, and bonding. And I don't want to launch here on, the stereotypes, but traditionally men weren't viewed as the people that stayed home with the child, the women. But eventually we got paternity leave, which was for fathers to bond with their child. And then now the phrase that is much more commonly used is parental leave, which is newer. It's bonding for the parent to bond with the child regardless of the gender of the parent. So when we talk about parental leave, it's gender neutral.
And if you have a policy that still has paternity and maternity leave, just give us a call and we can work it out with you.
And we can hit the delete button.
Yeah, we can revise that pretty quick.
Dad took paternity leave for he said he needed to bond with his guitar. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
He was very bonded. Okay, so are these unpaid? Are they paid?
Well, they're primarily unpaid. There are a few states that are implementing a paid family leave, Oregon, Washington, and those go through contributions by the employer and the employee that are pulled out of paychecks. If you're in one of those states, give us a call as well, and we'll walk you through that because they're very complicated. Actually, they're not too complicated, but it's its own system, right? And once you get into Oregon leave laws, it is complicated. So I will say that. FMLA is the federal law that does allow for unpaid leave, but there are specific parameters that the employer has to meet, as well as eligibility requirements for the employee. I don't want to deep dive into that, but that's for typically larger employers with 50 or more employees. And then there are specific requirements for the employee to receive 12 weeks a year for unpaid leave to bond with the child, childbirth.
Right. That sounds exciting, but I don't know how many people can actually afford to take 12 weeks of unpaid leave.
Right. The reality is they take a couple weeks and they have to go back to work to start earning income.
It's kind of off the grid for 12 weeks.
Right.
So
don't need the money.
Most people live in states where there isn't any law that requires it. So we're really talking about an employer benefit that is optional for the employer to provide in the majority of states. And so, we're looking at whether they want to grant this as a benefit to people.
Okay. Yep. So why are people considering that benefit now?
Well, I don't know what you're seeing, Jeff. For me, it's pretty much, trying to attract applicants in this low unemployment.
Right. It's absolutely for applicants as well as retaining employees. There's just such low unemployment, and some companies really want to look family friendly. That's kind of the optics they want to have. Hey, we have this great parental leave policy that's paid, and so
I noticed you said look family friendly. I was going to say be
look
family friendly. You kind of want to be. It's interesting though that it is a popular benefit, but it isn't the most popular benefit for employees. Yeah. Health insurance is obviously the overwhelming. And what else do we have?
Which makes sense.
Which makes sense. Not everybody has kids, but everybody does need health coverage at some point.
Retirement's another big draw, and then flexible work benefits. But I get it. I mean, if your company is offering parental paid leave but not health insurance, I'd be like, yeah, I kind of want the health
little weird.
insurance. Right? I'd prefer
Why are
that.
you guys so into reproduction?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of got a couple other things going on too.
Yeah.
One thing of note is that in 2020, childbirth, parental leave, paternity, all these leaves, let's call them parental leave, they actually kind of peaked. And in the last few years, they've actually dropped, both in terms of what the employer or candidate is looking for and what the employer is giving. Just as an example, childbirth leave dropped from 53% of employers giving it in 2020 to 35%. That's a big, and then paternity leave, 44%, now down to 27%. These are significant drops in 2 years.
Do you think it's massive. Like people are having less kids?
I think that companies are finding that it is expensive. Wouldn't you say, Patty? I mean, what are you seeing with your clients? But I think from what I've seen is it's an expensive benefit. Benefit is the key word. You don't have to give it. And so I think that some companies, they just can't handle it.
I'm seeing that as
well.
well.
With your clients?
But it also speaks to what Jack said. It's not. It depends. Some companies, that's not their demographic, and people would rather have it's tied whether people would rather have a flexible schedule regardless of whether they have children or not. And so they're seeing it not as popular as a benefit as they were thinking. Also, there's a lot more remote workers. And so this is kind of odd, but they think, well, why should we give it? They're with their kids anyway because they're remote working.
Have you tried remote working with a toddler? It's a little intense.
Says someone without, I mean, really, whoever said that rationale, they work at home anyway. I don't know.
Plus, especially during the pandemic where like people are like, parents are teaching their kids, right? They're making sure their kids on Zoom. And for anyone who had like an elementary school kid, oh my gosh.
I don't think fractions are a bonding experience. I think they're a very divisive experience between parent and child.
On top of remote work and laundry.
I think it's interesting that even they're saying 35% of people are giving these leaves, because I'm really seeing that about my clients, only about 10% are actually giving paid parental leave. And it might even be less than that. It might be 6 to 10%. Jeff, what are you seeing?
It's small.
Yeah, I think it's not a large amount, but people are definitely considering it to attract applicants. And so I do think, and that's why we're talking about today, is if you're considering it, what you should think about doing. Yeah, I think to me, I think it is an attractive benefit. If you can afford it and you can do it legally, which we'll talk about, then
you shouldn't do it. No kidding.
Right. I think it could be a useful tool to get applicants or get some retention. But
I think so too.
But it's a small amount, but it's definitely in the air. There's a lot of conversation about it.
Yeah, and if you have, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jeff.
No, you go.
What's your name? You're my child.
I
didn't spend enough time with you.
Catherine?
I'm seeing it's also all over the map in terms of what companies are giving, what they feel they can budget. My larger companies are giving about 4 weeks parental leave. Some are giving 2 weeks. And so as far as paid time, they're giving unpaid time, but as far as what they can even pay. So I have a few, there's one or two that gave 8 weeks, but that is rare.
Yeah. That's a lot. And also, I do think it's not even just looking family friendly. I think, Jeff, with the recruiting thing, it makes sense because if people are actually trying to build families, that's going to be a massive incentive if they can be paid. So they are kind of putting their money where their mouth is for those.
If that's kind of on the horizon, it's like, that sounds like a good benefit,
Right. So if you're going to do it, you're going to go for it. Woo, let's do it. What are the legal things they would have to look at? Because you said that you want to do it legally. I mean, obviously, but.
I have opinions on this and why we got in trouble as a country legally on this. And, I've read a lot of articles about traditional maternity leave because that's where it started. And some people think it was because you wanted to support a woman taking time off. And it was also pretty sexist, frankly, that men didn't need that bonding time, in my opinion. I think this is one area where men have really not been represented. The other thing is some people feel like women's place was in the home. So almost feeling like a forced maternity leave, historically.
Absolutely.
And so when it comes to the United States, where I've seen is that companies they're keeping with some of the stereotypes, and they're having 2-tiered leave systems that get them into fast legal trouble.
Okay. What are the?
You're
what
like,
are
what are you
those
talking
like?
about?
Right.
No.
right.
I mean,
Well,
what are the tiers? I guess.
Yeah.
well, essentially what they do is they'll put it under one policy or they'll have maternity leave. And so they'll allow the birth mother to have, quote, bonding time.
In addition to recovery.
In addition to recovery. And then
Okay.
the father gets just something very different, much more limited. And so you're
Okay.
differentiating between father
Who's the right?
and
You're
mother,
deciding who the
right?
primary caretaker is, like from the optic
Right.
standpoint, when that may not be suited to the family that's getting the benefit.
Exactly. And you're giving the father what we typically see is you're giving the father significantly less time for bonding. And so it's a gender issue, right?
Right.
Is what
Right.
the second thing that we've seen a lot is they have policies that are trying to actually do what you're saying, distinguish between who's the primary caregiver, who's the secondary caregiver. And then a lot of these actually don't even account for same-sex marriage or adoption, foster care. It's quite expansive.
Yeah, it's very.
so-
We're living in a little bit of the dark time with it, where it's just heterosexual couples with very stereotypical roles, not a lot of movement in that.
Exactly.
Right. And, I know some companies that are well intended that they want to, help people give paid time off, but I try to tell them what you're doing is actually really not just sexist, it's illegal. It's discrimination. And
Right.
and so it's not even just an opinion. It actually is illegal.
Right.
God,
just
we love
so
the law.
Yeah. Historically, I mean, even to date, on average, companies that give women leave give 8 weeks. Companies in the United States who give men leave for the same purpose give 0 to 1 week, which I love how they say 0. That means you're not giving leave. So
why
don't
even
even
put
say
it
it.
Right.
According to the EEOC, which is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, these policies that are these different tiers are discrimination based upon sex, based upon gender. And there's been a few major settlements. In 2019, there was a $5 million settlement from JP Morgan Chase, where again, they had more leave given to women than to men. Estee Lauder in 2018, they settled for over $1 million with the EEOC under similar allegations. So this again is not just a stereotype. This is actually an illegal practice to make presumptions about what the different tiers are.
And generally,
So they got for doing the wrong thing.
Yeah, and generally what they're doing, like in these cases, is they have one policy, a parental paid leave policy, but then they tier it within the policy, and it's not clear. And we'll talk about how to avoid this, but that's typically what these are.
How do you avoid it?
I think we need to first look at what the EEOC suggested because they're the ones that are getting these big settlements. So I like to defer to them. And so
I always defer to them.
Yes.
For anything.
So they say you better be carefully carefully distinguishing between a childbirth leave. I don't even want to use the word maternity anymore. EEOC doesn't want
Drop
you.
it.
It's a childbirth leave, okay?
Right.
If you gave birth, okay? That
Physically
obviously is
giving
the
birth.
female, you know.
Right.
But childbirth versus parental bonding. And so leave related to pregnancy, childbirth, pregnancy complications, related medical conditions, that can call that childbirth. The rest of it called bonding, okay? You even have to distinguish between when it changes from childbirth for a woman to bonding. See what I'm saying? Like, and how many weeks you're going to give to recover from that
How
birth.
much is actual the medical recovery, and how much is the bonding, the spiritual bonding, or whatever kind of bonding with the child? Also, something I just thought about, that to give birth, you could have someone who is male identifying have a child as well, and I'm sure that's a whole other thing. That's like, why even just get rid of the maternity paternity language of it all?
Right, exactly.
So I just had to say that.
No, it's true.
Well, and as Patty's saying, you essentially have two policies. You have the childbirth and the parental bonding. Where people get in trouble is they say parental bonding, and like we were talking before, parental bonding, but women get more time. Right. You know, and you can't do that. If you're going to allow for bonding time, or going to give any paid bonding time, parental bonding time, it has to be the same for both parents. It cannot be more for one than the other. If it's parental bonding, you can do the carve out of childbirth and and all of that.
Yeah, so Jeff, what
Okay.
I'm seeing is that I looked it up.
For the medical side, too.
I
Right.
gave birth to 4 kids, not TMI, but
Wait, what? What?
but we didn't
That's how
have
they
any
got
paid. We did not have paid leave. Okay, you just took
Right.
time. Okay, you
Right.
saved up your vacation. But typically, people are giving 4 to 8 weeks to recover from childbirth. That's what, if you look at an OBGYN association, that's what they're saying. C-sections, 6 weeks for sure on that. And so we're looking at recovery, and then we're looking at bonding. Okay,
Right.
so
It's
Right.
two different things, really.
right, okay.
Okay, so we're avoiding the gender issue by just applying it uniformly. So what should parental leave policies contain then?
Well, now we're parental leave land. We're not talking about childbirth, anything like that. The time,
Okay.
first thing is the time has to be equal for the amount of leave for all new parents. Okay.
Okay.
It's not gender specific, not mothers. It's got to be the same for all new parents.
Right.
I would avoid terms such as mothers and fathers. It doesn't matter. Fathers,
Right.
mothers, mother, just parent. We're in the
Yep.
parental leave land. We're out
Everyone's
of the
in the
childbirth.
same role.
Right. So
Right.
we're just going to be neutral as to gender terminology, sexual orientation. We're not going to refer to, anything like that because we don't want to run afoul of the law and we want to do the right thing.
Right. And I would definitely set parameters when you're creating this as to how to qualify, who gets it, who's eligible to receive it. Full-time employees, part-time employees, how long do they
Right.
have to be there? Usually it's a year of service before they're eligible to get parental leave. And so I would definitely have some set
That makes sense.
parameters as far as who qualifies, is it based on hours worked and whatnot.
Right.
Yeah, that seems like the best way, just to do it based off of work or I don't know,
Right.
maybe not seniority or whatever, but I don't know.
Right. The other problem is that I see a policy in place, but the work culture doesn't reflect it. And people for example,
How do you
males particularly say that they're discouraged from taking it or made fun of for taking it. And they're
Right.
self-conscious about it. Women feel that if they take the whole time, that people resent them or they get off the career track. But if they come back early, people are like, do you not love your child?
Right.
You hate your child.
Yeah, you're a bad mother.
And
I
then
think
their
that
child
is
ends
really
up like Jack. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, and it is a very scary life. I'm kidding. Wait, Mom, we're very close.
She worked from home. She was with you.
all
with
the
you all
time.
the time.
We
You're
hung out
watching
every
Buffy,
day.
right?
I know, remember the good? And then I just saw the light just like leave Mom's eyes.
Just
like, what?
I was like, no, we had the best time.
The other thing
Seriously.
is make your policy simple. I see
Yeah.
these complicated, who's there most of the time, who's not. I mean, just
Right.
say we're giving 4 weeks of parental leave bonding. You have to take it in the first year. You have to have been an employee
Right.
here for a year.
And you can
You're the parent.
Right.
Whether you adopted, foster, surrogate, who cares? You're the parent.
There's bonding that has to happen.
Right. I would look to the actual language that FMLA uses because I think it's well defined as
Yes,
far as
good
all
point.
of the parameters. And you could just take that language and slot it into your policy as far as the parameters of if you're the biological parent, if you're acting as the parent. I mean, you can review it, obviously, but they have a really good, clear set of parameters as far as who's eligible for parental bonding leave. And I would almost
Okay.
just copy and paste that,
Yeah.
It's not
That's a good
plagiarism,
one.
And giving
maybe.
suggestions to people who are wanting to give a childbirth separate policy. Keep in mind that most companies now have short-term disability benefits, and that covers recovery from childbirth, whether it's natural or C-section. And usually that's 6 to 8 weeks. So you don't typically need to have a childbirth plan unless you want to supplement that pay because short-term disability pays about 66%.
Yeah.
Some only pay 50%. But if you want to have that, keep in mind that you're not wanting to double dip because they won't qualify for short-term disability if they're also receiving compensation from you. And so,
Right.
that's why most companies have gone completely away from a childbirth paid leave and just say, we're going to give 4, 6, 2, whatever weeks of paid parental leave. I love those clean policies. I know you do too, not just because of having to read them, but they seem, completely fair, consistent, and they're embracing and supporting family.
Right. No, I think those policies are great. The other thing that I've seen some companies do who can't necessarily afford a full 4-week paid leave is they try and boost their PTO just across the board. And they, not significantly, you can't give like, okay, everyone gets 4 weeks a year, but a little boost, as well as there are plenty of unpaid leave options
Jeff,
that companies can offer as well. If they can't afford it, but you can still say, hey, if you're a new parent,
I struggle with
leave
these
or something.
You can tell I'm struggling over here.
I'm drowning.
Even though mother of 4, I didn't get these paid leave benefits. Hey, that would have been great. But I do struggle with the fact that giving a super rich benefit to only a small demographic rather than a lot of people who either can't have children, have chosen not to have children, to, whatever it is, fill in the blank. So in a perfect world, I like the idea of actually giving more PTO and letting people decide what to do. It's just expensive is the problem.
Well, the thing is if you're looking to use this, as many of our clients have called asking about, as a way to recruit applicants as a perk, you're going to cast a broader net or hit a broader audience if it's a PTO increase or some other benefit, because as Pat is saying, parental leave is pretty exclusive to whoever's going to have children, right?
Right. Yeah.
Which, granted, a lot of people do, but it's not everybody necessarily. And so
that's right.
So that's just something to consider. If you're using it truly to attract applicants, maybe there's some other benefits you could provide that aren't this.
Yeah. The EEOC gets some heat from people saying where you only look at female rights, sexual harassment, sexual discrimination. And kudos to the EEOC here, because they are actually advocating. They're advocating for same-sex rights here. They're advocating for male rights, that men are suffering discrimination here. And so, this is an area that they have taken a stance that they will sue you if you are going to have a disparate parental leave policy. I mean, do not go there. So.
Don't.
Yeah.
I'm not going anywhere near that. I'm not going anywhere near
Don't
it.
touch that. I'll
take the PTO time.
Skip, go, and go straight to jail. EEOC jail.
One last thing Jeff and I found funny is that one policy they had to add saying, while you're on this 4 weeks of parental leave, you actually have to be within 5 miles of your child. Because people were going on cruises and leaving their child with the grandparents.
We're putting 2 tracking devices, one on you and one on your child. And the moment that they're 5 miles apart, your leave is void.
Everybody's blindfolded.
Right.
You said a small key. You and your child will find a small door. Do not go into it. Okay, so to recap, it's a good thing, but it's a hard thing because it's expensive.
Yeah.
Childbirth, that could be different. That's different than the bonding time.
You should have two policies.
2 different things. Jeff, I can do this.
Okay.
I can
see
conclude.
how you paid attention.
Okay, and so but you can set them for different sets of time. That part I was a little unclear on, so sorry.
You can set the childbirth for a specific amount of time, 2 weeks.
Okay.
That policy, and then the parental bonding for all new parents can be set at 4 weeks, 2 weeks, whatever you want to set it at.
Okay.
So if someone does give birth, they get the 2 weeks, and then they get the additional 4 weeks for bonding.
Right. Okay.
They would be eligible for both policies. Yeah.
That's good. That we like that. And then also, you can do define who gets it based off of if they've been there or length of service or if they're part-time or full-time.
Right.
And then gender neutral, obviously. I feel like that was one of my biggest takeaways. And
that is the takeaway. And then obviously you want to review by legal counsel. Any of these policies really need to be reviewed by legal counsel to make sure they're compliant with Title VII. So.
Yep.
Title VII,
give us a call if you have one of these policies or if you have an outdated maternity leave or paternity leave policy, give us a call and we'd be happy to review it.
Jack's Googling Title VII, the anti-discrimination
What is
law.
Title VII?
You're like, is that a clothing store in the mall?
I was like, sounds chic.
Next to Forever 21. But give us a call for sure if you got any issues or if you've seen any weird policies. Also, we'd be interested to know what, if you do have a paid parental leave, how much time you're giving. Because people want to know what other people are giving. And so let us know if you're giving 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12, anything.
Or you're firing people, then you are going to jail.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, well, that was really interesting. I am pregnant, and I'll talk to you guys soon.
See you in 9 months.
All right. Hope you guys have a mayhem-free week, and we'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week.
No mayhem. Managing Mayhem is presented by Management Northwest and Management Southwest and cannot be copied or rebroadcast without prior written consent. By listening to this podcast, you understand that we, or at least two of us, are lawyers, but we are not your lawyers. Therefore, nothing we say on the podcast should be taken as legal advice or considered to create an attorney-client relationship. It is solely meant for your educational and informational purposes. The podcast should not be used as a substitute for legal advice from an attorney licensed in your state. Please be aware that listening to lawyers can cause side effects such as migraine, self-doubt, and also may cure insomnia. But you know what? Trust your own judgment or you're not your mom.